So what are we pairing? Food and bell. Okay, so the neutral stimulus is always paired with the unconditioned stimulus. Okay? Bell plus food. We do those things together. And the idea is eventually you want to be able to get rid of this step entirely. You want to be able to ring a bell and get the dog to drool without having to present it with food. Okay? That's what Pavlov was trying to do. So once this pairing has occurred, now what do you have to do to get drool? You have to present the dog with food? Do you still have to? Now that he's learned the bell means food is coming, do you have to give him food? Right. So now you just have to ring the bell. Okay? And then what happens? The dog drools. Okay, so is the bell a stimulus or response? Stimulus. Is the drooling stimulus or response? Response. Are they conditioned or unconditioned?
Conditioned.
Conditioned because he's had to be been taught to drool in response to a bell. And now this food has been replaced with the bell. So the unconditioned stimulus becomes the conditioned stimulus. And then the unconditioned stimulus is cut out of the equation entirely. Make sense? Okay, we'll do a few more examples. So I know this is super confusing. Do people randomly walk through classrooms at the high school?
Yes.
That's creepy. I don't know who those people are. It could be school shooters as far as I know. Smart, put on an Abbott t-shirt and go walk around school. I mean, how are you supposed to know? Alright, let's see another example. Okay, so at my house, I live on a farm. We have animals that love to escape. My bull, for instance, his name's Mr. Pickles. Okay, and he's a big guy. He's got horns like out to here. And when he wants to get out, he can just lift up his corral and he walks out. I might as well leave the gate open. Okay. He really does too. So I have taught all my animals to come to me when I whistle. Okay. So the way I do that is every time I feed, I whistle. So now they think, oh, food's here, and they'll come running. So if I need to get him back into his pen, all I have to do is whistle, and this big 1,500-pound bull will come galloping through the desert to get back in his pen. Okay? So,
Do you give him food?
yeah, I give him food. I always make sure. You can forget this learning, which, did you guys catch what it was called? Extinction. Okay?
Oh.
Your learning has gone extinct. It's called extinction. So I want to make sure he never forgets that he's supposed to do this. So in that scenario, I whistle, the bull comes. What is the neutral stimulus?
The whistle.
The whistle. Very good. Why?
Because the bull wouldn't come back if it was just the whistle.
Because if I just went and found a random bull and whistled at it, that bull's not going to come running towards me. Hopefully.
Well, he might.
He might, and his owners have trained him for that. Okay, a typical bull is not going to do that. Okay, not unless he's just angry at me. Okay. But he's not going to come expecting to do that. So what did I have to do in order to get him to come to a whistle? Provide food. Feed. Okay, I whistled and then provided him food. So what is the unconditioned stimulus? Food, okay? Food is a stimulus, and it creates a reflexive response, which is what?
He comes.
He comes running, okay? Running bull. And is this conditioned or unconditioned?
Unconditioned.
Unconditioned, okay? So food will cause any animal to come to it. Okay? He's hungry, I put food down, he's gonna come eat it. I don't have to train him, it's reflexive. So now what do I need to pair in order to train him to a whistle?
Whistle, food.
The whistle and the food. So I whistle and give him food. This is the pairing. That's a people. So remember, neutral stimulus and unconditioned stimulus are always the two that get paired. And what's the goal in this? What do we want to get rid of?
Running.
The food. We don't want to get rid of the running, because then if he gets out next time and I whistle, he's not going to come. So we want to get rid of the food. I want to be able to whistle without any food around. Make sure that he just comes as soon as he hears a whistle. I don't need to go find him wherever he is and show him, look, I've got food, please come with me. I want him to come running to me. So we want to eliminate the food. So now pairing or acquisition has occurred. He's learned what the whistle means. So now what is the conditioned stimulus? The whistle. Now the whistle means something to him. And his response to that is? He comes running. Is that making sense? You guys want to do another example, or are you?
We're good.
You're good.
I have a
Okay.
question.
Yeah.
So I know I can go from neutral to unconditionally conditioned. Can you like find different layers of conditioned after that?
Yes, absolutely. So I could now, instead of whistling, if I wanted to train him to something else, like what would you want to train a bull to run to? To his name, let's say. I want him particular to come to Mr. Pickles. So now I could pair the whistle, because now the whistle means something. So I could just use the whistle instead of using the food. And then I pair the whistle with his name. Okay, and then eventually he comes to his name. And I didn't have to use food in that scenario at all. So this is actually what we call shaping. And it's how you get complex behaviors trained into animals or other people. Okay. You do the same thing with your children, or when you were children, your parents did this to you. They conditioned you that the sound of your name means you. So now you understand this random pattern of sound has meaning to it, and you respond to it. And then they train you that certain tones of their voice when they're saying your name mean different things, like whether you're in trouble or not. Right? And so it becomes more and more complex over time. And then you have all the language structure and nonverbal. And so you're shaped over time into some very complex behaviors. Or if you want to, well, this is really getting more into the operant conditioning, but if you think about how you train like Shamu to do a trick at SeaWorld, you don't, the first thing you do isn't to try to get him to jump through a hoop, or, well, I don't know if he doesn't jump through hoops, but, whatever, complex behavior to, I'm going to stay here in the water, and I expect this wild killer whale to push me into the air, and we'll have graceful fun together. Okay, it's probably going to eat you. So you have to start with some really small behaviors and work up to a bigger one. Okay, yeah.
And in that specific example, the conditioning can be like broken at random, right? That's why Shamu can attack.
Yes. So, I mean, number one, you have free will. So, Free Willy, right? Free Willy had free will too. So you can you learn things, but you have some flexibility in the choice of whether to act on it, and especially human beings because we have such higher order thinking. So you're trained to do certain things, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to instinctually obey. Now we do have the tendency to do that, and TV and corporations and everybody's constantly using our learning in order to manipulate us. For instance, we learn that when it gets dark, what do we do with our activity level? You go home, you calm down, you start settling down. So if you go to a casino and it gets dark, you're going to stop gambling. So has anybody ever been in a casino?
I don't think I'm allowed.
How many windows do you see? None. 0. Okay? So, very smart of them, right? They want you to stay longer. So the darkness is a signal to you. You're conditioned that darkness means start settling down for bed. Stop what you're doing. And so they want to prevent you from getting that trigger.
I thought for a minute you were going to go with like the windows, there's no windows because the instinctual reaction of losing is jumping out of it.
Yeah, well, that might be part of it too.
I wish we jumped out of windows.
They do all have lock Whereas now they need bulletproof windows. Okay. See, we talked about that. All right, so this is a video of a guy named John Watson, and we talked about his research. John B. Watson. And he started the school of behaviorism. You guys remember learning about behavioral psychology?
A little bit.
Chapter 1? Feels like a long time ago now, doesn't it? So that's what this is. This learning is behavioral psychology. If I'm dealing with a druggie, okay, somebody who's addicted to drugs, they're trying to get off of it, then I want to learn what is it that triggers you? What is the stimulus, the conditioned stimulus that creates the conditioned response of craving the drug? That's what a behavioral psychologist would look at. So what are your triggers, and then how can we eliminate that from your environment so that you're less likely to get back on the drugs? Okay, so behaviorism is really important for helping people with psychological issues. Now, Watson, when he started behaviorism, this was during that eugenics time period. That, remember, genetics is destiny, and if you have bad genetics, you might as well be eliminated from society. But Watson came out and said, no, it's not behavior, there's not genetics, it's environment. If I put you in the right situation, I can get you to do any behavior that I want. If I want you to gamble longer, I just have to change your environment in order to do it, and it's very effective. So behaviorism really moved us away from that genetics-based eugenics sort of idea.
But not everyone believes that biology is destiny. For many scientists, it's your experiences in life that count. Your upbringing, your education, your environment. Chief among these scientists is psychologist John Watson, who offers a theory that is the mirror opposite of eugenics.
This was the heyday of hereditarians and geneticists who said that human beings were constrained by their genetic inheritance. And Watson was saying that this is baloney, that human beings were shaped solely by their environment.
Over the years, Watson studies the behavior of babies, hundreds of them. To Watson, we arrive in the world a blank slate, tabula rasa. Nearly everything is learned. Even things we think are instinctual, like fear. To prove that environment is more powerful than genetics, Watson designs an experiment for an infant known as Little Albert. He's so confident, he films it for posterity. At first, Albert shows little fear, even when Watson places a burning newspaper in front of him. Albert is also unafraid when he encounters a white rat for the first time in his life. But then Watson shows Albert the rat accompanied by a loud clanging noise. One of the few things that upsets little Albert. And he does it again. And does it again. Eventually, Albert learns to fear not just the rat, but all furry things, even without the loud noise. In Watson's mind, the little Albert experiment is a success because it proves that fears are learned, not inherited. Watson calls his theory behaviorism and begins to popularize it. He urges parents to take active control of their children's upbringing by shaping their environment. To think of the home as a scientific laboratory.
Alright, so that's John Watson and behaviorism. So you notice one term that they mentioned in there was tabula rasa. This is, I think, Latin? I could be wrong, but I think it's Latin. It means blank slate. So he said people aren't born with this genetic programming. They're born just completely blank, and then everything is taught to them over time. Now, he is wrong. We are born with genetic programming. For instance, some people are genetically more likely to be afraid of things than others. However, he is also correct that we very much do learn a lot of stuff. So, anybody afraid of dogs in here? Or anything else? No? Okay. So when you have a fear of something, it's often taught to you. Now, you may be genetically more likely to become afraid of things because you have like a sensitive nervous system, but what you specifically become afraid of tends to be taught to you. So you see somebody afraid of dogs, and you think dogs must be scary. So at our ranch, we have an Airbnb. You guys all know what that is?
Yeah.
It's instead of staying at a hotel, people put their houses up for rent or rooms for rent, and then you can stay in an actual home, which is really nice. So we have an Airbnb. People come out to the ranch and rent. We have a guest house that we rent out, and we hear all the time, "Will there be dogs?" Because my kids are afraid of dogs. And I tell them, "Well, guess what? Your kids won't be afraid of dogs by the time they leave, because we have like 5 bloodhounds running around free range at any one time, so they're going to be surrounded by about a quarter ton of canine." And they usually stay for 2 days. Within 2 days, their kids are fine with dogs. Okay? They're totally over it. So they learn to be afraid, and then they learn not to be afraid. They were conditioned out of their fear. So you can be conditioned either way. Anybody have a phobia in here?
I don't know. So,
Well, I don't think I can not be afraid of drowning.
Cannot be afraid of drowning. Well, here's the question. Drowning is a normal fear, right? We wouldn't say that's irrational. However, if you are so afraid of drowning that you won't get on a boat, or you won't get in the water, or like one student of mine, she couldn't be around a swimming pool, she couldn't be within 100 feet of the ocean, and she had panic attacks while washing her face in the sink. Okay? That's what we call a phobia. Okay? That's taking something from a typical fear. Like, I can remember as a kid taking the boat to Alcatraz Island in San Francisco. Anybody done that? It's a great experience, you should do it. But I can remember staring down into water thinking, there could be great white sharks right there. This boat could sink. I could die. I was a weird kid. I think that's a rational fear. Now, did I have a panic attack? Did I freak out and collapse? No. It wasn't irrational. It was a rational fear. Like, that's a genuine, San Francisco Bay is a scary place. Okay? There's only been, they think, 2 people who have survived escaping from Alcatraz Island swimming across the bay. Okay? I just saying Alcatraz, not worth the escape. I hear they had good spaghetti. So, that phobia that my student had that was extreme of drowning, she had been trained. So she had been conditioned through this process. Water is a neutral stimulus, or at least fairly neutral. Okay? Water doesn't typically give people panic attacks. Water doesn't ruin people's lives. Just thinking about water causes her to be anxious.
Well, water's in
What was that?
so
But she had a bad experience with water. She had a bad experience with water, okay? So when she was a kid, her dad thought he was clever, and he had heard the best way to teach a kid to swim is just throw him into the swimming pool.
my
Okay?
grandma did that.
Stupid idea. Absolutely stupid idea. So she almost drowned, okay? To the point where they had to call an ambulance and everything, and she had to be resuscitated. Bad, right? Really bad experience. That you can successfully toss a kid into water and teach them how to swim the hard way, but that's after you've given them lots and lots of hours of foundational work on swimming, okay? And I still don't suggest it. Still not a good idea.